Some of these dates they've sent for the book tour, I don't think they're going to work, unfortunately. July the 15th, I'll be up to my eyes in the Winslow Boy.
Welcome to episode 30 of the Jonathan Creek podcast, where we're up to our eyes in it.
Yeah, and I don't think the schedules are going to work.
No, how are you?
I'm very well, Gerry. How are you?
So.
Yeah, you've always got something to complain about.
I enjoy it. We're on the final straight for the Jonathan Creek podcast, I would suggest.
Yeah, we're into the Polly Chronicles.
Yoko Creek.
Well, that's your interpretation.
We'll find out if it's accurate or not.
Yeah.
This episode is a bit of an odd one.
Odd's one word.
It starts off well enough. In fact, I would suggest that up until the last 15 minutes, it's very decent. All goes to shit after that.
It doesn't end well for anybody, really, when you think about it. Particularly not the people who wrote it and the people who had to watch it.
So you didn't enjoy it?
I liked most of it. There's so many good elements in this episode, but it doesn't work at the end. It doesn't. I find it hard to express how frustrated I was when they just said, "Oh, we can't figure out a way to solve this. Let's take an easy option."
Mm-hmm. It didn't make sense either. It wasn't just the fact that it was an easy option. It was nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it was even worse than when they did it in Spearfish.
Oh, spoilers.
Oh, okay.
It's a very long episode. It felt like a very long episode. It's the 90-minuter again. The second last long episode, I believe.
Penultimate, you might say.
You might. So with that in mind, I think we should begin.
Fair enough.
Summary?
Okay.
Crack on.
In the clue of the Savant's thumb, we and Joy along with us meet a changed Jonathan. No longer the sorcerer's apprentice, this suited and coiffed city executive is more interested in corporate presentations than ghostly manifestations. That is, until Ms. Ross and another old friend entice him to don the duffel once again. But with a friend both dead and his body vanished, and an historic secret haunting the dead man's widow, will this be Creek's final case? And is it perhaps one mystery too far for a man with new priorities?
Thank you, Ian. It's 3 years since we last met Jonathan.
Yeah, he's done a lot more in these 3 years than he did in the 5 that had the gap before.
Yeah. We can get on to it, but I think the progression, the metamorphosis, it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't, I don't know. There was nothing to suggest that in this very short space of time that this would happen.
No, and it doesn't seem to me in keeping with the character and how we've seen him behave previously. And it's almost like they say, well, let's make Jonathan married.
It's a bit of shark jumping.
It's getting that way, certainly is. I mean, there's no reason why Jonathan wouldn't be married after 3 years, but this particular marriage and these particular circumstances, it's
I agree.
Significant.
We begin this week's episode at Waxwood Hall.
Yeah, cold open, literally.
Yeah, it's a very bleak winter morning at the derelict site of what was once the Catholic school of a middle-aged woman who wistfully looks at it through a fence.
Yeah, we get an intertwined segment here where she remembers being a student at the school and also is there now, and it kind of moves between the two time periods.
Yes, we see her younger self look down at her from a window above. It has obviously changed into a flashback that David Rennick is so fond of.
He loves these.
And we see a group of schoolgirls. I've wrote here bullies, but that might not be quite accurate.
I didn't think they were bullies. We'll come to why later on.
Yeah, they encourage her certainly into writing sacrilegious messages on a blackboard.
Yeah, the new girl is the one that's made to do the writing, yes. And I think the board has written above it on the frame, God is just. And they make her add a figment of the imagination.
And at this point, their teacher, who is a nun, enters and verbally abuses them.
It reminded me a little bit, you've not watched it, but the series Derry Girls, which is very good and folks should go and find it and watch it. Some of the Catholic schooling in that, which is a bit more modern than in this episode, but there was some nun-student interactions that just made me think of that a little bit.
Okay. Sometime later, the girl, I think it's Rosalind, who is the older woman that we just met, she's handing out notes to her friends in the hall, but one of them is grabbed by the nun.
Yes, it's Natalie, the new girl, who is apprehended by the nun and asked if she has anything to say about the blackboard incident earlier.
I think she's called weird.
Is she?
Yeah.
Okay. In any event, she denies any involvement with that.
Well, the reason that she was called weird is because the nun looks at the note and can you tell me what was on it?
It was just a series of symbols and a little hangman at the bottom.
Yeah, and she refuses to tell the nun anything.
Absolutely.
That night, in the dormitory, Natalie lies awake and frightened by the weather. What happens?
Yeah, she thinks she hears a distant scream, and eventually it kind of cuts to the morning, doesn't it? Or no, it doesn't. It cuts to the other girls screaming, and Natalie is both dead and marked.
Yeah, but we should say as well that we saw her in bed. The bed is raised up.
Okay. Well, unless that's her imagination.
Yeah, I mean, there's an indication here, there's a hint at some supernatural forces taking place.
Some sort of retribution for her crime in the classroom, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, in the morning there's a scream. The nuns rush in to find the other girls crying around Natalie's bed, who is lying there, open-eyed, but dead.
Yeah, she's dead, and there's a big red ring on her forehead with another mark in the middle of it.
Yeah, it looks as if it's been seared into it.
It's not great.
No, it's quite nasty. Back at the school in present day, with the grown-up Rosalind, we see her inside. I think it's maybe the bedroom from her childhood.
It might be.
She's staring at a crucifix hanging from the wall before looking down at a text message that she has received from one of her other school friends called Beth. Now, what did that read?
It says, "Remember 1968, the year of the circles."
And we have another brief flashback which shows the other girls discover what?
Well, they wake in turn, presumably on different days, and find each of them has had a red circle placed on their forehead.
And Rosalind is being sent to an isolation room to reflect on her sins alongside a painting.
Yes.
Of whom?
St. Barnabas, I think?
I think so, yeah. And after an initial rebuttal of authority, the effects of the Bible, which is in the room, the painting itself, and the mysterious bright light seem to convert her through terror into prayer.
Certainly some form of frightened little girl there. It was a bit of a weird situation.
Very. And things get worse for her. What happens?
Well, the painting reaches out and touches her inappropriately, and I think she's just shocked by the whole event.
Shocked, yes, but not necessarily put off by that, because I think she also reaches out.
Yeah, but interestingly though, she is a bit of a cynic when it comes to the religious side of things, and it doesn't seem to have converted her to faith, despite the prayer that she offered up. Because when her friends asked her what happened, she denies that anything of interest happened there at all.
Okay, I read that entirely different from you then. I think she was converted, but she was that scared. She didn't want to. It was obvious there was a fear when they asked her what happened. It wasn't a confident nothing.
But she goes on to write books about atheism as an adult.
Yeah, but still, she didn't want to. If she didn't believe it, then she would have mentioned it.
Yeah, but I got the impression that the other girls had talked, or there was talk in the school about what happens in that room, experiences of this type.
Yeah.
And I think her view has always been that it's not possible. That's my interpretation. And so she doesn't want to suggest that anything unusual happened.
Yeah, but
so either because she doesn't believe it, or because she's just going to pretend it didn't happen.
All right, okay.
Although it did obviously still bother her, because she mentions it later on, doesn't she? Okay.
I think we end this scene by the camera close up on her face, which then evolves into the present day Rosalind.
Yeah, for anyone who was still in doubt about who Rosalind was,
Yeah.
they put a big massive sign with an arrow pointing at her. It is Rosalind.
And this was obviously a pre-credit segment, because we now have the credits, and we arrive at the Tartikoff household.
Yeah, there's a man watching an interview of himself on the television.
Franklin Tartikoff, who we find out is the husband of the grown-up Rosalind.
Yes, I think he used to date Maddie as well.
We'll get to that. As the camera approaches this huge castle-like house, we do indeed find him watching an interview of himself, and the camera moves over different items to highlight his eclectic interests.
Yeah, it's certainly varied and unusual.
He is, however, clearly a man with a background in science and medicine, and apparently has developed into a writer of satire.
Yeah, well, the satire involved somewhere along the line in his career, I believe. He's having a bit of a joke with the interview on the television, isn't he? I don't remember the exact joke, but I saw that they were having a bit of a carry-on. Something about arse doctory is what I've written down. I don't remember the exact phrasing.
At this, we see a man who we learn is a Peter Churchill pull up outside in his car, and he looks saddened about what he is there for as he glances down at a briefcase sitting next to him.
I've noted as well that he looks sad. He's certainly not here on pleasant business.
Pensive.
Before the man gets to the front door of the house, the fellow inside, Tartikoff, turns his television off and loads up a CD or a DVD on his computer.
He does indeed. And I think at this point we hear him on the phone. That was the clip we heard at the top of the podcast.
Yeah.
And casually mentions that he will be dead by the last week in September, just as Peter arrives at the door.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate.
Certainly for him. And on his way down the stairs to answer the door, he continues his call, where we hear he has terminal heart disease. I think he knows this because he's got some new technology which is able to accurately predict life expectancy.
That's fortunate, but
Well,
not as fortunate as not having the heart disease.
In any case, he invites Peter up the stairs and they mention the funeral of Rosie's old school friend that she was at that morning.
Yeah, it's worth noting that the two of them are on first name terms. It's obviously a long-term doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah, it would appear to be. I think they mentioned that Rosalind has been obsessing about this funeral for a few days. It's obviously been playing on her mind.
Yeah, and I think she has to address the funeral. I think she's, as a close friend, she's going to be speaking, and we see that.
We do, at the cemetery, where she says a few words at the grave beside an odd coffin.
Yeah, I think it's been positioned just to slide nicely into the grave there.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works. In fact, I know that's not how it works.
She's got greased runners underneath it, ready to go. Rosalind's quite heavy in her address to the congregation, isn't she? She's not in any way celebrating the life of her friend. She's giving...
No, I think as it's been alluded to, there's something playing on her mind. There's a sadness, or certainly perhaps a responsibility that she feels.
Yeah. After the service, she speaks with her friend Beth, who had texted her earlier.
Yeah, so Beth is the vicar. Now, this was a bit strange. It wasn't ever explained. They were at a Catholic school.
Yeah.
And Beth is now a vicar. Now, you don't get Catholic female priests, so she's obviously changed to religion. But there was no reason behind that. They didn't say, because of what happened in the past or whatever. It's a fairly major jump to go from going to a Catholic school to becoming a female vicar without making a note of why.
Yeah, I wonder if we just conclude that they had such a bad experience at the Catholic school that none of them are practicing Catholics anymore.
Yeah, but that would have been, I don't know, it would have been...
Yeah, better said than implied, maybe.
Yeah.
Beth's got this need to keep examining what happened in the past. This is probably why she texted about it earlier on, and I would imagine, although we weren't told, it probably relates to Grace dying. That's probably why they're in contact.
Yes, I think that Kate and Grace are both dead, leaving just the two of them from this original gang.
Yeah. Rosalind, though, wants to leave it in the past. She says that they're just children and they, quote, didn't deserve that.
Yeah, it's quite ambiguous. We don't know what they didn't deserve. And I think she says she hopes they will pull the building down very shortly.
Yeah.
Beth, she responds in kind by saying that the ghosts will always be there. They can't run from their past. But Rosalind wants to let it go and move on, but she's not convincing me that she's doing a good job of that.
Oh yeah, she's able to do that, yeah. Mm.
Back to the Tartikoff house.
Peter's back, I think. He's the GP.
He's not back, they've not left. This is this
so the
morning.
funeral was happening while he was there. Okay, that makes sense. Right. He's still there. Mm-hmm. It's just a checkup, apparently. Doesn't explain why he looked so sad. I suppose if your patient's terminally ill, every checkup's a bit sad.
Yeah, especially if he's your friend.
Yeah.
Franklin takes a call from someone called Fariba, who is returning from making a documentary about a primitive jungle tribe, and we see her holding a statue to prove it.
Yeah, we've seen this sort of thing before in Jonathan Creek, haven't we, with statues that are implied to have properties.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can each say that she's Franklin's daughter.
Yes.
Adopted daughter.
It appeared to be so.
Yeah.
And as he continues his call with Fariba, we see Rosalind return. And Peter tells her that he has made a slight adjustment to Franklin's medication and leaves a prescription for her before they do what?
Well, they kiss passionately and briefly while Franklin is in the next room.
Yeah, not great behaviour.
It's a bit off when he's dying.
Yeah, wait a few months. Up in her bedroom, and still thinking of her childhood, Rosalind takes out a picture of her and her 3 friends, as well as the coded note.
Yeah, there's information that we get later that we should have had here, because the implication here is that she's still got this from when she was a kid, but what's actually happened is that Beth has sent this to her when Grace died.
Yeah, so Beth had it the whole time.
Yeah.
Sometime later, Rosalind is admiring the statue as she talks with Fariba, who tells her that it is of a god with a name translated as what cannot be explained.
Yeah, and on that basis, she thinks that Rosalind won't be interested, being a person who doesn't like gods or does not believe in gods.
She then asks about someone called Brad, and her parents tell her that he will still be pining for her, no doubt.
Desperately, apparently.
Of course. And we meet up with Brad next.
Yeah, he's not.
He's not at all. We're at a farm where we immediately cut to him having a literal roll in the hay with Joey.
Yes, literally.
Yeah.
And twice.
Yeah.
That was an interesting decision by the director there, wasn't it?
I'm not sure if that's a nod to young Frankenstein.
Okay.
It's a joke at the beginning of that. And after they finish doing what they're doing in the hay, we hear that Brad is looking after this farm for the owners who are out of the country. And he just picked up Joey at a petrol station.
Yeah, Joey gives all this information, which Brad obviously already knows, so it must just be for exposition.
And from their position in the car that they are now sitting, Joey asks about the building in the distance. And he outlines the story of the girls with the red rings on their head from the 60s.
He does.
It's obviously a local legend.
Yeah. At this point, he gets a phone call.
Yes, from Fariba.
He half fobs her off and half suggests they meet at some stage, but it all goes very badly wrong when she turns out to be there.
Yes, he's feeling quite pleased with himself as he fobs her off whilst Joey is sitting beside him. But yeah, he looks out the window to see an irate, and rightly irate, Fariba.
Yeah, and that storyline doesn't really get taken anywhere else.
No, I mean, it doesn't. This is one of the major issues that I have, not the fact that that relationship doesn't get taken anywhere, but how it actually does impact upon the plot. But we'll get to that, because just now we have to go to a concert hall.
Yes, we see a very enthusiastic man on the timpanis, and it spreads out to show a whole orchestra.
Yes, and then we see the enthralled audience, apart from the suited and booted Jonathan, who is asleep beside a blonde woman, as the orchestra climax, causing him to mumble and wake up with a start.
Yeah, all very embarrassing, but nobody says anything, and they proceed to the after show, or interval perhaps, in the bar.
Yes, at this reception, we find that the blonde is called Polly, and she is talking to the Tartikoffs before introducing her husband, a marketing executive at her father's agency.
And I never got a chance to introduce you all properly, did I, to my husband, Jonathan? Don't think you know Jack, producer extraordinaire. He's still based in Euston, if I remember that right. And Davina, and Rosalind, and Franklin Tartikoff, you obviously know.
Though, to me, you'll always be the right Reverend Leslie Clitoris. I mean, priceless. Some of the stuff you got away with, those early satire shows on radio. Remember the mad Catholic bishop who tied women's legs together in a reef knot?
Oh, gosh. Yes, Leslie Clitoris. The BBC had no idea what we were saying. They thought he was the chap who wrote The Saint.
So, anyway, this is all news to us, Polly. What was it, a whirlwind courtship?
More like an emergency airlift. Poor man was living in a windmill, weren't you, when I first met him? Thinking up conjuring tricks for a living, so, you know, a bit of a reboot required there, but...
Well, good for us all periodically, I think, to metamorphose, move on.
I was born a man.
Exactly. Oh, mustn't forget, by the way, it's Jack and Davina's anniversary today, so many congratulations to you both.
To the lucky husband and his lovely wife, many more to come.
Okay, before you discuss what is the obvious discussion point in that clip, Leslie Charteris was the writer of The Saint.
Okay.
Roger Moore.
That's quite a good reference then.
Yeah. But yeah, what's the obvious thing we have to note?
Well, I think Jonathan needs to go on a course to learn about sensitivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's now 2013.
Yeah, and it's not so much that I think he would be upset if he thought he'd offended anybody. So he's not trying to be hurtful, but he's completely oblivious to the potential to cause upset. He just kind of blunders in.
He does, and he looks shocked and amazed that there may be some people who are transgender or going through some sort of... He's not anti that.
Yeah.
So just, if you are surprised by it, hide your surprise.
Yeah, don't look, first of all, stunned by this possibility.
Yeah.
And second of all, just chuck around pronouns like they don't matter. Because what's he doing? I mean, you'd think if anyone else with half a brain in that situation would think, oh, God, if they don't know what to say, if they don't know how to
keep your mouth
just
shut.
Don't address it.
Just
Don't
say hi.
Blunder in.
Yeah, say hi, how are you doing? Don't get
Or
involved.
congratulations,
Whatever.
it's their anniversary.
Exactly. But I think the thing that stood out for me was it's just that the shock in 2013 that this could be a thing didn't really...
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't... The guy said, I was born a man, strongly implying, or saying basically, he is no longer considered himself to be a man.
Yeah.
So why is Jonathan referring to him as a husband?
Who knows? I
It's
think
just-
it's... Again, we've said this before. I think this is David Rennick's idea of comedy. I think he thinks this is amusing.
Well, it's not amusing, and it makes Jonathan look insensitive and rude.
It makes him look a bit dated.
That as well.
In any case, the group disperse after this awkward moment, leaving Jonathan with Rosalind, who compliments him on his cognitive abilities and claims herself to be a fan. And I think we see him think back forlornly.
Well, there's an ominous reference to that being a closed chapter in his life, which I don't understand. She's literally just been introduced to him.
Yeah.
So, okay, she's heard of him doing these cases before. How does she know it's a closed chapter in his life? Where's that come from? It's the fact that he's working in a job at the advertising agency.
Yeah.
He could still be doing it.
Suppose we don't know what Polly has told her.
Yeah, maybe privately elsewhere. Yeah.
Anyway, we go back to the Tartikoff house, where we have a quick shot of Franklin in his garden at night, detecting something. Bats, yeah. And we see he is wearing a distinctive thumb ring.
Yes, that's a little bit of a weird thing to do.
Ugly piece of jewellery.
Horrible.
Later, as he writes at his desk, Rosalind says goodbye as she leaves for her supposed bridge night.
I don't think Franklin's buying it.
Yeah, I think it's apparent that both know that she's not going to be playing cards. Well, not unless it's strip poker.
We also see Fariba here reviewing materials, presumably for her documentary that she talked about.
Yeah, she's in the living room, I think. And as Rosalind gets into the car, we see Tartikoff himself look down at her and make a call telling someone that it is the perfect night for it.
It's a thunderstorm going on, so I wonder if he's referring to the weather, their atmosphere.
Yeah, but why? You're only practising. Why would that be? It's not a performance.
I don't know. Spookiness.
We're next at Peter's house, where, post-coital, Ross tells him that she knows that Franklin knows about them, but he promises things will be different.
Once he's dead.
Once he's dead, yeah. In a year's time. And I think she responds sarcastically.
He says something with a miracle cure in his spare time. And
Yeah.
yeah. She leaves Peter and his home and heads off to her own house.
Yes, in treacherous conditions, and after hearing crying from upstairs, she finds Fariba in Tartikoff's study with the door locked. So what does she do?
She knocks on the door, and then when she gets no response, she peers through the keyhole and sees Fariba next to Franklin's obviously dead body.
Yeah, it's propped up against a wall.
Yes, sitting.
Yeah.
She asks what's happened, and Fariba retches and passes out on the floor.
Yeah, I think she gets blood in her hands
Yeah.
and collapses. So rather than calling the police, which is the first time someone in this episode, but not the last time, someone should have, what does she do?
She hyperventilates and then calls Peter.
Yep.
And then she takes a photograph, which is a bit odd. Why would you do that?
It's not the type of thing you would do, yeah. Why?
Oh, my dead husband, quick. Better keep this one for posterity.
Everyone these days, that's all you do, don't you? You live your life through your
She's probably
phone.
putting it on Instagram with a filter.
Yeah. Or one of those little, what is it, when you can put like a wee sort of mouse's face or something?
Aye, on Snapchat,
Is that what it is, yeah. Yeah, why take a picture?
No, there's no reason.
Other than...
Unless she thinks, oh, they're going to change this scene.
Yes, another one. Complete plot conceit.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. And why did she phone Peter? Why not the police?
I suppose he's the doctor. At least that's what...
No, he's a GP. He's not. Someone's
Come and diagnose what's happened here. Also, he's her lover, so it's just maybe just going to someone who can support her.
No, my first reaction would be to call 999, get an ambulance out there. He might need to be airlifted. They might need to be sped away to hospital with all the contraptions that your local rural GP will certainly not have.
Yeah, you would think. But then he's already dead, so...
She doesn't know that.
His eyes were open.
Yeah, he might just be very tired.
He's not moving in the picture.
He's probably dead, but you don't take the chance. Oh well, you're saying it's like, oh, God, he's dead anyway. I'll phone Peter.
Go to the pub.
Yeah. He arrives.
Yeah, he's got a crowbar, but he doesn't need it because the door is kicked down fairly.
Oh,
fairly
no,
easily.
we should say that.
Oh yeah, after the photo was taken, the snib is flipped down from the inside.
Yeah. So she can no longer see what's going on. That's just very suspicious.
Oh yeah, and convenient.
Very. Yeah, so Peter arrives with his crowbar, but decides just to...
He kicks the door down, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why. Firstly, why is a doctor got a crowbar? It's like, we'll take these stitches out. Why would he have a crowbar?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe he's a part-time burglar.
Yeah, so he kicks the door down. What does he find?
The room's empty apart from Fariba lying almost exactly where she was on the floor.
Yeah, she starts to come around, and as Peter searches the room, Fariba says that she found Franklin dead, and when she heard someone come up the stairs, she locked the door because she didn't want to open it in case the killer was still there. And even though it was Roz, for all she knew, the killer might be holding a gun or a knife to Roz.
So yeah, obviously locking that door is going to keep the killer out.
Of course.
We get a lingering shot on the creepy statue.
We do, yeah.
Obviously suggesting that it is to blame.
Mm-hmm. The next morning, we have a brief shot of the locals who have gathered around the gate as we see Joey appear.
Yes.
But we quickly head over to the ad agency. Can you remember what it was called?
No.
Morley and Plank.
Okay. It just occurred to me with the introduction of Joey that she hasn't had a bad back since that one episode it was a plot point.
Maybe it's been 3 years.
Is that an operation?
Or lots of physio.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. She is speaking to a receptionist at this company looking for Jonathan. And when she realises what the company is, she thinks she must have the wrong person.
Not just the company. When she's told that this Jonathan Creek has meetings at Claridge's and then he's going to go to his club, that confirms it for her.
Yeah, she thinks it's a different person altogether. But
as she's leaving,
the staff sort of photo board, she's on there as a senior assistant director. That's a lot of promotions very quickly.
It's almost as if he has married into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is indeed the former windmill dweller who is now a senior account director.
So we next see her in his office.
Yes, in a suit and with some sort of swept back hair. He pours coffee and notes the smirk from Joey at his drastic change in lifestyle.
Yeah, he's quite defensive about it. He calls it growth and development, and you're never quite convinced that he believes it.
No, I mean, she can't contain her laughter at this nonsense.
Yeah.
And I think spurts her drink all over his groin.
I think it's his shirt. Because he has to change his shirt.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yes.
See, that's the thing. I can almost accept Jonathan saying, okay, do you know what, perhaps if there's a storyline that Adam went off to the States,
yeah,
and Jonathan didn't want to leave the UK.
Yeah.
So he now is looking for a job, and his perhaps creative mind has got him into a position in some marketing agency. I can almost accept that. But it's the whole, now he's he's like Gordon Gekko with his corner office. And it's not nicely, because that's...
I like your Gordon Gekko reference. It dates you a little bit. I think most folk would say Don Draper.
Okay, Don Draper. I've not watched it, so it's got always Gordon Gekko for me. I don't eat lunch. But he's married into this, and there's no way in that period of time he should, as you mentioned, have that level of promotion. He shouldn't have a corner office.
No.
So he's not done it on his own merit, you wouldn't have thought, unless he's just a marketing genius. But he never was. It was always Adam who was doing the marketing side. John was just purely
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you don't know what his role is in the company. He obviously works in tandem with Polly, because she comes in to join the meeting.
Yeah,
so maybe she's the one that does the nuts and bolts, and he's the one with the big ideas.
Yeah, but he's never shown that before in the past. That's what I'm saying. The big ideas, he's not that type of... He's never shown any aptitude for marketing.
Nope. But maybe once he turned his hand to it, he was very good. Or maybe he just maintains his position as a lie.
Maybe he is just sleeping with the boss's daughter.
Yeah, although normally that would displease the boss.
No, sometimes if the boss likes you.
It's certainly an awkward situation, I would think. I would imagine he's not liked by his colleagues.
Despised by them.
Almost certainly.
Anyway, as he is changing his shirt, he tries to justify this change as much to himself as to her, I think.
There's a momentary interruption when the receptionist calls up to warn him about the strange, crazy lady that's tried to get into his office.
Yes.
Who's had to be escorted off the premises at least once already. Joey finds it particularly amusing when he tells her his next meeting is with Weetabix. But then she kind of gets into the Franklin mystery, assuming that he's going to be interested.
Yeah, I think she refers to it as the vanishing, the conundrum of the vanishing man from the locked room. I mean, his ears prick up at this.
Only briefly, though.
Yeah, no, it's because of the name.
Right.
I think he must mention Franklin or Tartikoff.
Yeah, well, no, when she mentions Tartikoff, he makes a connection, but before that, he says he's sure there'll be an explanation, and once she's found it, nobody will care.
Yeah, and they don't get to discuss it in any further detail because just as he is zipping up his trousers, his wife walks in.
Yes, and says that she didn't know he had a meeting.
She seems fairly relaxed.
Well, she looks a bit surprised, but I think she's obviously concluded that there's nothing going on, it just looks bad.
Yeah, but even then, even if she thinks, oh, he must have spilled something, if you don't know who this young blonde is, you would not expect him to be doing this in front of her. You'd say, who are you? Why are you getting changed in front of... Why are you doing this in a meeting?
Well, maybe she thinks he'll explain when they're on their way to the meeting.
Yeah.
Or presentation or whatever.
Also doesn't consider Jonathan to be the type who would displease her in any way like that.
She trusts him.
Yeah.
As they head off to the meeting, Polly and Jonathan, he wishes Joey luck with the mystery. Mm-hmm. Obviously showing no interest in getting involved himself.
Well, not showing any interest.
Not expressing any interest.
We are now outside the Tartikoff home, and with the cops keeping the press out, we see Joey sneak in through the garden, but gets unsettled by noting someone else nearby with a torch. It's obviously night time now.
Well, she's doing her usual thing, trying to stay hidden, waving her own torch around, but then spots somebody else's torch and is wary.
Inside the house, Fariba sobs as Rosalind has a drink when a cop enters holding Tartikoff's bat detecting device.
It's almost like an aha moment for the policeman's like, yeah, it's for bats.
I thought that was going to go somewhere, but that wasn't ever really...
No, it was nothing.
No.
Rosalind warns the policeman as well about these bats. Apparently there's keen interest on Franklin's part, and they should be careful when they're in the garden.
And we find out why the warning was required, because Joey finds herself trapped in some netting.
Yeah.
Before being discovered by a less mobile Inspector Pike.
Joey Ross. Bear with me just a few seconds. I could switch to voice recognition, but calling up a Wikipedia file is not without risks. Now, according to this, you run a website which catalogues and explains real-life paranormal experiences in occasional collaboration with... Well. A name that immediately sprang to mind, of course, when this little puzzle first presented itself. He and I had the pleasure of working together once on the curious matter of the limping man. Some years before a sniper's bullet put me in this contraption.
So, you wouldn't be Gideon Pryke?
They tried to retire me, of course, but I still have the use of one finger, which is enough to argue my case. And please God, the world has moved on since Raymond Burr. Sergeant Cudlip! The heel of a man's shoe. Size 11, I'd imagine, directly below the victim's study. Get me a cast as quick as you like and roll out Operation Dandini.
Yeah, I think that's where DC O'Brien would have been, sir, when he was checking out the windows.
Except DC O'Brien's tread is quite dissimilar, and this chappie appears to be standing hard against the wall with his nose in the bricks. Unusual behaviour during a thunderstorm. What do you think?
No problem, Gov.
Assigned to me just this week by someone upstairs who knows bugger all about bugger all. But you've got some form in this line of inquiry. What say we go and pool our early observations?
I'm no doctor, but I can't say I've heard of any cases where someone is completely paralysed except for a finger. I don't see how the mechanics of that would work.
You're right, you're no doctor. Let's move on. He is, however, as sharp as ever. And we see him speed off there in his wheelchair with Joey following. And I think through this episode we note that Joey is very impressed by him.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting how happy he is to have her on board. Not happy that she's there to help, but just content with her presence. Like, he doesn't have a problem with that. Whether it's a show-off ego thing or he just likes an extra opinion, I don't know.
We are now at Jonathan's home, but it is not the windmill.
Oh, it's a sad house, isn't it?
It's like a magazine, isn't it? It's a design.
It looks like a show home.
Show home,
exactly
yeah.
Right. There's no carpet, there's no stains or anything, there's no litter or anything lying around, there's no books.
No.
It's very, very sad.
With a brandy in hand, he watches the news and hears about the Tartikoff mystery and the involvement of Pryke, who we learn suffered this injury rescuing a child's puppy.
From a sniper?
Yeah, I don't know.
Polly wants to turn his knob.
Yes, tell me about that.
She says he has a little knob, and they use it when his brain gets overheated just to... So this sounds a lot like she's stopping him from doing something he enjoys.
Yeah, I mean, she's not quite as bad as Nicola, but I think she is understanding and sympathetic, but still wants him to...
Not do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, these are your interests. They belonged when you were single. Now you share my interests.
She goes on to take a call from her dad and Jonathan's managing director as his own phone rings with Rosalind on the line. I think she's frightened and presumably wants his help.
Yeah, because she's losing a bit of a grip on what she was certain about. Disappearing people might do that to you, I suppose.
Over at the Tartikoff house, Joey and Pryke are looking at the picture taken through the keyhole by Rosalind. Yeah,
they're actually in the murder room, as it started, the room where the body was photographed.
Yeah, Joey does her sort of summary up thing for the audience, for us, before burning her hand on the tank in the airing cupboard and letting her frustrations be known. So I think this is another red herring.
Yeah, could have been boiled away or whatever else. There is an amusing reference here where Pryke shows disappointment in Joey for her lack of instinct and suggests the photos on the stairs are suggestive.
Now, why would that be amusing?
Well, he doesn't look like a big stairs user, to be honest.
Yeah, he's obviously been carried up there, so he must have been getting carried up and then says to him, "Whoa, stop!" And I can just imagine these two guys holding the chair because it's
incredibly heavy.
Yeah, it's not a normal wheelchair; it's a motorised one. Yeah. We cut back to the Creek household, where Polly comes back into the room, whittering on about business and mentioning the fact that she has to leave the country in the morning.
Yeah, well, her dad has a meeting in New York and she is now required to attend the meeting. So she's flying out and she's away to get ready now.
But Jonathan is clearly more concerned about the Tartikoff situation.
Yeah, well, he's been watching it on the news and I think it's going around his head a wee bit.
Back over to the house now, and on the stairs, Joey considers the photos showing Tartikoff with celebrities, including who? Did you take a note?
Oh, I saw some of them, I can't remember. Stephen Hawking was there, I think.
Woody Allen, Meryl Streep, and someone else that seems to please her. I think maybe she's just pleased because she's worked out.
Yeah, the clue.
So rushing back up like a kid who wants to please her father, she states that Tartikoff had a habit.
Yeah, I'm not buying this, but in all these photos he's got his thumb out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not buying that that's a thing that someone would therefore always do.
No, maybe, yeah, because it could be a thing that you do
when it's warm.
Or when you're posing.
When you're posing is the exact thing I was thinking when I watched it. Because obviously if you're dead, you're not posing.
Yeah, in any case.
The photograph that Rosalind took, his whole hand is in his pocket.
Yeah.
In fact, you have taken that note, not posing here, question mark. Yeah.
Ironically, however, he was posing. He'd been posed.
He'd been posed, yes.
Well, part of him had.
Yeah. I've written here, it's ridiculous if they use this to assume someone else put his hand in his pocket. And then next line, they assume someone else has put his hand in his pocket.
But they don't know why. Pryke then points her to a corrupted CD found in Tartikoff's drive. Now, even in 2000, I'm saying even in 2013, 5 years ago now, there's no way that they could have established that that's a corrupted CD. They're taking that back to the lab.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance that the techie guys would have been able to get into that.
Yeah, get some of the data from it anyway.
I mean, just because it's scratched and you can't read it in your own computer doesn't mean to say it's inaccessible.
Yeah.
For everyone.
No, absolutely. In any event, they're more interested in what's written on the back of it.
What was that?
Return to GP.
What else is suspicious?
The computer keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fingerprints
There's nothing on it.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big clue that we should probably,
Flag up.
well, not only flag up, but when you're watching the episode, that should start alarm bells ringing. Well, hang on, someone's cleaned his keyboard. Why have they cleaned his keyboard? What's on the computer?
Pryke then calls to one of his detectives.
Yeah, I think he doesn't just call to her, he recognises that she's coming in the room before she even appears.
Yeah, it might be one of those situations where you're less mobile, so your other senses become stronger.
Yeah, heightened, perhaps. He asks her to check diaries, phone books, filofaxes, trapper keepers, whatever she can come across for the initials GP.
Yes.
What was your initial thought about GP?
Initial thought was a doctor, but
Yeah.
but you're thinking, but that won't be the
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, that was mine as well.
Pryke then drives off, telling the impressed Joey that it may be an inside job and that he will have it out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you think someone around there knows more than they're saying.
Almost certainly.
I think we go to the next morning. Jonathan is seeing Polly off.
Yes, she kisses him goodbye, assuming that he is going to be bored over the weekend, but it is obvious that he has other ideas. For as soon as she is gone, what do we see?
He pulls a young woman out of the wardrobe. No. He pulls the duffel coat out of the wardrobe and he's back into investigation.
I like that. I thought that was brilliant.
It was. And the musical cue was quite good.
Yeah. And we're back to the Tartikoff homestead, where Joey tries to apologise to Fariba about the incident with Brad.
Yeah, she said she's not that bothered about it and then starts waffling about faith and wisdom.
Yeah, I've got here, spouts mystical mumbo jumbo, whilst moving towards the statue that she brought home from the jungle.
And Joey makes the observation here that that's where Fariba must split from her mother.
Yes, we find that she was adopted after being saved from the Andaman Islands when she was 3. I think there was a flood or something.
Flooding, well, obviously it'll be monsoon season, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the split that she refers to is there's a book on the counter Rosalind's written called Why Atheism Matters.
All right, yeah, sure.
So she's all about faith, mumbo jumbo. Rosalind's all about no faith. It's
Never the twain.
Yes, there's no possibility of crossover there. Yes, and these islands are obviously where Fariba's been back to make her documentary.
Yeah, I think she starts to wonder if she lost something growing up in the West and whether a human can just float. No, they can't.
Yeah, well, she talks about transubstantiation. I think we've had this before, haven't we?
Have we?
I remember, was it maybe in the introduction to the Gorgon's Wood?
Maybe.
That sort of mystical documentary style feature with Bamber Gascoigne.
Possibly.
I could be wrong. I'm sure transubstantiation's come up before.
Okay.
Anyway, Jonathan shows up, which has pleased Pryke enormously.
Yes. I think he says it's good to have him back in the saddle.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're in the study next.
Yeah, I've got a series of headers now that say bit later, because we get a few little jumps forward in time as we go along. So it's a bit later. And Joey is disappointed that Jonathan's not yet solved the case.
Yeah, I think you mentioned him earlier, but I think she says she's not surprised that Don Draper hasn't solved it.
Jonathan does, however, point out there's something not quite right comparing the two photos.
Yeah, but he can't pinpoint exactly what it is. Yet Joey then seems a bit annoyed because he has already noted the thumbs out.
Yes, and the footprint.
Yeah.
And a bit of blue tack.
Nope, not the blue tack. Well, he has, but she's not.
Yeah, she's not got that yet.
Yeah.
And he says it might mean nothing and it might be the most important clue.
But at this point, he's no idea, so he's just saying that. He's just trying to...
They never figure it out either. They get told later on what it was, but they never figure it out.
Yeah. He then claims that GP is unlikely to be the doctor, even if she is sleeping with him.
Joey's outraged that he figured this out, and he explains that Rosalind told him.
Yeah.
And then he makes her tell him again.
Up in Ross's bedroom, yeah, we cut to her filling in the details of her marriage for Jonathan and Joey and Pryke, where she accepts that it was more cerebral than physical, certainly latterly.
Yeah. Pryke asks specifically about the text from Beth.
Yes, before admitting in his delightfully sneering manner that he has already checked up on the whole affair from her childhood. So he knows about the red circles.
Yeah, at this stage Rosalind almost tries to change the subject by bringing out a local newspaper.
Yes, well that's brought up shortly.
Yeah.
Down in the kitchen, she does mention a subject that she describes as more sinister and current than...
Yeah, this is what's in the paper.
Yeah, so tell me about this.
It's a secret society is rumoured to have been meeting. This would never be in the local paper.
No, did you think of Hot Fuzz?
A little bit like that, but it's the kind of things like people meet in hut. It's like, that's not news.
No. I mean, if you were a journalist in that newspaper, you would investigate it.
Yeah, you wouldn't just write, oh, there might be a thing.
Yeah, but people...
And it's not even saying they are meeting, it's saying they might be meeting.
Yeah, and it's a secret society. Your first thought would perhaps, maybe they're swingers.
Yeah, maybe, or anything.
Anything, yeah.
It's not illegal to meet.
No.
In this country. Freedom of assembly, or whatever it is. Anyhow, Pryke doesn't care, quite rightly.
No, he laughs off the suggestion of funny handshakes and masonry.
Yeah. And Rosalind leaves. She's going to a seminar.
So this allows Joey to pull Jonathan back up to Rosalind's bedroom, claiming that the article was an obvious diversion, as you mentioned, to get them out of the room.
Yeah, she wants to show Jonathan something.
The something is in a locked drawer. How does she get into this drawer?
With brute force.
With a foot file. Yeah. And what does she find?
An envelope.
What's in the envelope?
Well, the things that we saw earlier, the photograph and the coded note.
Okay. Pound to the penny. This is what you didn't want us to see. Postmark. Same date as that text. Her down here on the right, would you say? With 3 of her old buddies.
Waxwood Cove, March 68.
Waxwood Hall, I thought that place was called, but... named after somewhere on the coast, maybe? They all went on a field trip once, or... And what have we got here when it's at home? Some sort of schoolgirl's code? And a drawing of a hangman. Come on, you put all this together with the year of the circles. Why was she so keen to convince us it was all just ancient history?
And why did the word circles have a capital C?
Just get the feeling all that weird stuff that happened there. There's got to be a connection.
Something that still haunts her to this day, and has somehow wormed its way into every corner of her life. So where exactly is this Waxwood Hall?
What is it that makes Jonathan think this has wormed its way into every corner of her life?
Massive assumption.
There's no evidence of that. She's concerned because her husband died and went missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're at Waxwood Hall now. We're inside. Joey is doing some research on the place on her phone and tells Jonathan about the punishment known as the quiet room.
Yeah, the solitary room with the touchy god.
Very. With Jonathan upstairs, she gets a little unnerved by a rattling noise as he sees a carving on a window upstairs.
Yeah, he also identifies that as where the photo was taken.
Anyway, he returns and ponders why the photo was named Waxwood Cove, but Joey is more concerned about the noise, which Jonathan then goes to investigate. And we see him look around a classroom and then cut to a gloved hand at the banister above Joey.
Creepy.
Yeah, and she seems to have worked out the code.
Yes, and she runs to tell Jonathan.
So in the classroom, on the blackboard, she explains the hangman strategy, but it's a bit deflated. Why?
When you flip the board over, he's already done it.
Yeah, what is the message?
It will be at midnight.
But he's more interested in working out what will be at midnight.
Yeah, he still has this capital C in the text message on his mind, and he thinks maybe circles was an autocorrect.
Yes.
He also thinks that cove might not be the full word. He suggests that perhaps it was coven.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, we kind of skipped over it a little bit. They had mentioned earlier maybe Waxwood Cove was somewhere they went on a day trip or something.
I think that was in the clip.
Yeah. So when Jonathan came back down, he was saying, well, it definitely wasn't that because the photo was taken here.
Yeah. But I think he does have a theory that it may have been Waxwood Coven, as you said, and the girls adopted the name of a Greek witch named the Four Circes or Circes, yeah.
Yeah, see, for me this is entirely redundant because calling it the Year of the Circles makes entire sense because they had circles on their heads.
Yeah.
So you're not benefiting in any way by saying Circes instead of circles.
No.
It doesn't help the story, it doesn't help them figure anything out. Once they've got coven.
Yes. That's the big clue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joey now understands the possibility that they had their own secret society, the girls that were, and he goes on to say that whatever happened, it suggests that the girls knew that it was coming.
Yes, and they're still dealing with it, he suggests. At this, Joey wants to go and find the quiet room.
She does. So with her torch, she approaches the open hands of the saint in the painting.
Music's very good in this scene. I had to take a note because it was very effective.
It was. Whilst downstairs, Jonathan discovers a number of replicas of this painting.
Yes, with holes in them.
Yes. And we have a genuine jump scare here. Did you get a little fright, Ian?
Well, I was watching this about midnight, and it was nobody else was awake. The lights were all out, and it was. I thought both the music and the drama of this scene was very effective.
Yes, I mean, I was watching it with headphones on in a quiet room, and I forgot all about this.
Yeah, someone tries to kill Joey, which doesn't make any sense when we think back later on. But
yeah, they grab her by the throat, and after an arm punctures the painting, and this causes her to scream out for help.
Yeah, she shouts for Jonathan, who runs through.
Yes, but by the time he gets there, the assailant has gone. And in the gap behind it, they find some Bibles, more identical paintings, and an empty sugar tin.
That's convenient.
Very, as if you'd leave all this stuff lying around.
Yeah, let's leave the clues to what we did.
Yeah. Anyway, they now know how the girls thought that they had been touched by the Lord.
Touched by somebody.
Yeah, and that someone is trying to frighten them off.
Well, they're trying to frighten Joey and Jonathan off.
Where do we go next?
Well, Joey notes that they are doing a good job of frightening them off.
Yeah.
And I think we're at a hotel where Joey's checking them both in.
Yeah, as she does that, Pryke is with Jonathan. He's showing him the CCTV footage from a local busybody who has captured the burning of a straw effigy on the night of Tartakov's death.
Yes, so now the suggestion is that this mystical thing is maybe a voodoo type situation. They burned this effigy and that caused Franklin himself to disintegrate.
Yeah, it's not likely, is it?
No.
And before he leaves, Pryke goes on to reveal that they have found a GP.
Yes, there's a note in an address book, I think, for a Greta Portland, and there's not many of those in the phone book, because you don't go in the phone book these days.
You don't. In any case, Pryke has arranged to meet, I think, or go to the address.
They're going to this address for one in South Derbyshire.
And after having another dig at Jonathan's new career, Joey notes that they don't know where the effigy video was taken.
Yeah.
But she does know someone who can help.
Yeah, I quite like this actually. She talks about what Polly will think, because she only knows Jonathan as Clark Kent.
Yes.
Yeah, Joey takes them to look for that guy that she had sex with one time.
Yeah, Brad.
And Jonathan despairs of her loose morals.
He's one to talk.
Well, he got married after 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, he picked up Emily at the bus stop after a sly wink.
And Nicola on the way out of the studio.
Yeah, but he already knew her.
Yeah, but he didn't. Oh, I suppose they'd had a previous relationship.
Mm-hmm. Anyway. Okay. I think there's quite a funny line as well about, I think he mentions him falling on his sword after she fell on his or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he then notes that there was recently a beam hanging from the barn that we're in.
Yeah, this doesn't go anywhere either, but there's slug trails showing that it was previously up on the wall. You can see the slug trail stops and then continues, and the matching part is on this beam on the floor.
It does. It's that was where the straw man was hung.
Yeah, for the trick.
Yeah.
It doesn't help them solve the
No, it's a complete red herring.
Yeah. Someone approaches.
Yeah, it's Brad.
Yeah.
And he's fine. He's all right about it.
Yeah, he's
Back to the hotel. Must be some time later, because Rosalind comes to his door as he pores over the death scene pictures.
Yeah, she wants to talk.
She does.
Meanwhile,
downstairs, Joey spies on Brad and Fariba having a drink, and she listens in as she receives a call from an Irene Aubrey.
Yes,
or Eileen.
Eileen
Yes, Aubrey.
Fariba takes this call from Eileen Aubrey, who she's familiar with.
Yeah, and agrees to meet her at, I think it's East Barn at 8 p.m.
Yeah, it was all in capitals anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And how does Joey see it? It's written on her arm, and Joey's got a tiny little mirror.
Yeah.
There's no way.
No chance.
Anyway.
Back up in the bedroom, Jonathan admits that whilst they both believe, him and Rosalind that is, in science and reality, he has no answer to what happened to Tartakov. And claims it's not physically possible. This, to me, stood out as being garbage.
Yes.
Of all the crimes he has solved, I mean, if you go back to the one about the garage and the paint can, and the one on the cliffside, all the locked room mysteries, you've
The
got the
answer's
monkey
always the
house.
same. The only person who can do it is the one who's in the room.
But no, there's always ways. He knows. This isn't his type of thinking. His brain is turned to mush. There's always an explanation.
Yeah, this is Polly's fault.
That is Polly's fault, yes. Little yokel.
Rosalind starts to explain her experience in the quiet room, but she's preempted.
Not quite the miracle it seemed at the time, I would suggest. But the reason you've buried it, I'm guessing now, is because you couldn't face the idea of being judged for a mortal sin committed by you and your Catholic school friends who belong to this, whatever it was called, Waxford Hall Witches' Coven.
The Sisters of Circe.
It's a nice Woody Allen story. A guy goes to the opera and accidentally falls into the orchestra pit. Too proud to admit his mistake and goes back every night for a month and does exactly the same thing. There's an echo of that here, isn't there? Those red rings that appeared on all the other girls' heads just had to be a smokescreen you deliberately repeated to make other people think the first one was part of some bigger supernatural mystery. I can speculate, Rosalind, till the cows come home about what happened that day at midnight. Some kind of initiation rite for the new girl that went horribly wrong.
I don't get the Woody Allen reference there. I've not heard the original joke, but to me it doesn't make any sense. So some guy goes to the opera, falls in the orchestra pit,
Yeah.
and then comes back then for subsequent nights. Now, okay, so the orchestra or the performers know he's not part of the act, so he's not fooling them, and it'll be a different crowd, different audience every night.
Yep.
So who's he trying to pretend?
And who is he? Is he an audience member? How does an audience member fall? Or is it a performer?
Or maybe, was he the conductor? Was that what it was?
Who knows? They didn't say, just said a guy goes to the...
Yeah. Even if it was a conductor. So he could only be pretending to his orchestra that it wasn't...
Yeah, he meant to fall and it was a joke or something.
But you would be thinking to yourself, yeah, but this isn't a comedy. Why you started? We haven't done this
Yeah,
in
stop
rehearsals
doing
at all. Yeah, stop it. It's not.
I don't understand it. There must be a key element of that story missing.
I'm sure. Anyway, what do we see through more flashback?
The initiation ceremony.
Tell me about it.
Well, these four are, and I mean, goes back to your point about them being bullies at the start. I think they're not, because they're accepting this girl into their group.
Okay,
it's a rough initiation ceremony, but what they do is they gag her, they lift her mattress up, put it back down, and then they put a jar on her forehead with a bee inside of it.
Yes, that's what caused the ring.
Yes.
Now, a couple of things. Firstly, I thought of A Few Good Men when I watched this. Anyway, won't spoil that if you've not seen it. But would a jar wouldn't cause that permanent ring? Like in the morning, they wouldn't have still have a ring.
I assumed it was from the allergy.
No, because they all had the
because then
rings.
they all got it after that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you do that with a glass jar, it'll maybe have a small imprint for
A short period of time.
yeah, but it's not going to be there in the morning.
No. Anyway.
Yeah, so tell me what happened. They've got a bee in a jar on her head.
Yeah. And the one thing they didn't want to happen was for her to be allergic to bees.
Yeah, but because she's been gagged, she can't explain
Yeah.
this.
And I think the thing that bothers her is the fact that she was trying to tell him, but she was gagged. And that is the thing that really upsets Rosalind.
Yeah, and through fear, the girls did nothing except give each other similar ring marks to perpetrate the supernatural myth.
Yep. And we find out the coven answers because Rosalind's cut off there's a reflection of the dead girl who was taking the photograph in the window. So she's cut that off because she couldn't bear to look at it.
Yeah, through feelings of guilt.
Yeah, we then get an explanation of the quiet room. This is horrific. This is ridiculous.
Okay.
The nuns, I think, are slipping them LSD in their water and then poking them through the painting.
Yeah, I mean, really, I can understand a bit of sexual abuse, but...
You can imagine the nuns going, what would Jesus have us do? Let's drug them up and poke them.
Yeah, this is garbage. That is really, isn't it?
It's absurd.
Yeah, and that's what's happened. They've been spiked and violated in order to believe that there is some sort of saintly intervention.
Yeah.
We're at the flat of Greta Portland now.
Yes, Pryke bursts his way through the door.
Yeah. Well, with the help of some uniformed cops.
Yes, but it's been turned upside down already. It's turned over.
Yeah, ransacked. Back to Jonathan's room. I think this is still in the hotel, isn't it?
Yeah, he's taking a call from Joey with the news about Fariba's appointment.
She's found out that this Eileen works for a trade paper.
Yeah,
What trade?
I don't know. Documentary trade, I guess.
But she is suspicious of the meeting place and the time. And the camera then moves to the left, and who do we see?
Rosalind's standing about 3 feet away listening to this.
So she's heard everything.
Yeah, and what we're going to find out is that Joey's misinterpreted this clue, but Rosalind, hearing it, gets it right.
Yeah. As we said, up until the last 15 minutes when the solutions are put in place, it's okay, but it all falls apart when you know what you know.
Yeah, we cut to what they think must be the East Barn, and they wonder, is this the secret society meeting?
Yes, Jonathan and Joey watch on as a group of people furtively congregate inside the barn. But after peeking in through a window, they discover a reasonably innocent explanation.
Yeah, it's a magic exhibition.
Yeah, I think it's the magic circle meeting or whatever.
Yeah. You've also got another bit here just before that of Joey and Jonathan trying to be discreet whilst waving torches around in a darkened yard.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, what happens here is that Jonathan has a eureka moment when he sees a levitating, spinning pumpkin as part of the trick.
Yeah, first of all, he realises that there was something missing from that photograph after all.
What's missing?
Africa.
Okay, fair enough.
That was my South African accent.
That was not
Did you
bad.
like that?
Yeah, it was okay. Can you say diplomatic immunity in that accent?
Diplomatic immunity. No, I can't.
Okay.
Coming up to 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
As we all know, that's an important time because that's when Fariba's appointment is.
Yeah.
And Jonathan realises that they're in the wrong place because this is the West Barn.
Yes, through the moon and the sun and the stars, he's worked this out.
This makes no sense. West compared to what? What
But
point of reference are they starting from?
Yeah, no, we would be able to tell.
No, but you can tell what direction West is, but West compared to what?
The moon.
No, everything's... No, that's not how it works.
I don't know. Listen, there's North Star.
But if you're standing in Glasgow, Edinburgh is to the east. But if you're standing in Dundee, Edinburgh's to the south.
Listen, Ian, everyone knows how this is worked. Just if you can't work it out, it just doesn't matter. The moon and the stars and the sea and a finger in the air, a wet finger in the air, that's all you need, okay?
Anyway, they conclude then that it wasn't East Barn, it was EA, the women's initials.
How do you think sailors used to navigate with the stars?
Yeah. They would know from their present location what was east and west.
Move on.
What's East Barn relative to?
Move on.
Were you the one that brought it back up?
It wasn't me. Go on, carry on.
Right, they realise that it's EA at St Barnabas.
Oh, that was...
Over at St Barnabas, Fariba hears that haunting jingling noise that Joey heard earlier on, and we get a point of view shot from the bushes.
We do indeed. Some time passes, and as she stands there, we see a figure up above push a statue from the roof aimed at her. This is very old school.
They're using the crowbar, so you're thinking, is it Peter? Because he had a crowbar at the start.
Yes. I didn't even think of that. Good point, yeah.
And
so that answers the question, why did Peter bring a crowbar?
So they could have a red herring from later on, yeah. Rosalind, at the last moment, from the time that it takes the gargoyle to fall from the roof to the ground, covers about 20 yards. Mm-hmm. So why did she not just shout, move?
Yeah.
And dives in the way and takes the gargoyle to the head.
She does indeed. Now, again, considering what we find out or who is responsible for that, there's no way you have to risk. You know how hard it would be to get someone to stand? I mean, what was his plan? He obviously wanted, he or she wanted to kill Fariba. But there was no way that they would know that she was going to stand in that exact spot. Yeah. So you must have went there with a plan to kill her some other way.
But why does he want to kill Fariba?
Well, we can get to that, but it doesn't make much sense. But
she would have to just wander over to that exact point and be there.
And if we know who they are, they don't have to try and... You're not an average guy who's got to try and hide the motive.
It won't be investigated.
Yeah, you just shoot her, kill her, strangle her, and then walk away.
Yeah. At this moment, Jonathan and Joey arrive, and Joey calls the police. Hey.
At last, someone has thought to themselves, probably only because Pryke was there.
Yeah, and maybe an ambulance as well, because obviously Rosalind's taken this almighty blow to the head.
Yeah, she's not dead. She was cradled in Fariba's arms.
Shouldn't have moved her.
Nope.
That was poor.
We're now at the hospital, and at the bedside there is Peter and Fariba.
Her family and her lover.
Yes.
And two strangers.
Two strangers. They're standing towards the door.
Yeah, this is, again, I'm not a doctor, but I can understand, blow to the head, brain swells up, you die. You're maybe able to speak and relate initially. I don't get how you would be able to communicate just before you die.
No, this is I don't buy this at all. But yeah, she talks about how perhaps Fariba was right. Some things you can't know in life, and so I mean, she's been hit in the head and she's dying. She's obviously going to talk a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, it's not really important information.
Not at all.
She dies.
She does.
Well, in fact, I think Joey comes back in and looks like she's been told by the doctor that.
Yeah.
Why would they tell Joey?
I know. Who knows?
Anyway.
Back at the Tartikoff house, Pryke has summoned Jonathan and Joey, Peter, Brad, and Fariba, as well as his two cops, into the drawing room in order to wrap things up. Very Poirot.
I was going to say it's very last salute to the Commodore.
Okay, fair enough. Let's not talk about that. Never mention that episode. He admits that despite being sceptical of the secret society nonsense, it turns out that it was at the heart of this macabre and ingenious illusion all along, with a perverse motive.
Yeah, it appears that he solved this case without us knowing about it.
Yeah, because he goes on to say that the missing body deprived them of a vital clue as to how the person was killed. That's fairly obvious, isn't it? If you don't have a body.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't identify it.
But he says if they knew how the person had been killed, it would have unravelled the case in seconds. Well, yes.
Jonathan then takes up the story by claiming that the revolving pumpkin reminded him of the difference in the two photographs. The globe had been moved, and Africa was no longer shown. Furthermore, he states that the reason Tartikoff's hand was not shown in the picture was because
there is, in fact, no hand.
But for all his credentials as this iconic polymath, there was a lighter side, wasn't there, to your father that was all of a piece with his early work in TV and radio. And yet another passion that he took a mischievous delight in keeping secret.
Emo Dikite. Tell no one. The society was very strict about all that. Like everything he turned his mind to, magic became quite a skill. Rather like yourself. He had all these amazing ideas for different props. Key design I'd put together. Then we'd meet up to make sure it all worked.
Okay, so through further flashback, what do we find out?
Okay, Brad had built this evolution of the sawing a woman in half trick.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to use this chainsaw to saw through the middle of a person with the chainsaw intact, and it would be embedded in wood, I think.
Yeah. Now, this is the night that we saw earlier when Rosalind left for her strip poker club.
It's the perfect night for it.
Yeah, this is what you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah. But unfortunately, something happened with the chainsaw and it accidentally cut off the head of Tartikoff.
That reminded me of Blackadder, where he accidentally chopped his own head off.
Yeah. I was doing a bit of reading into this, and I found a chainsaw expert, commenting on this thing. That's not possible.
It would be pretty hard. I mean, I can understand how you could lop a leg off or something like that.
Yeah, but with a bolt coming off and the blade coming away from the main part of the chainsaw, it would stop moving.
Yeah.
And it certainly wouldn't go flying up towards a neck.
No.
Anyway, Brad was upset, and so he did the important and natural thing, and he phoned Fariba.
Well, this is where it starts to get extremely nonsensical. So, Brad has witnessed Franklin Tartikoff have an accident and chop his own head off. He doesn't immediately call the police and an ambulance.
No.
He thinks the most appropriate person to witness this is going to be the daughter of the victim now.
Who he's just been cheating on.
Yeah, who he's been caught. Precisely. So you can't be in the best of books with her.
No. So
when you're trying to make up with her, here, come and see your headless dad. And why? This has been an accident.
There's no crime.
There's no crime here at all. And it's not as if they were up to something a little bit shady or they had a fallout. They were friends. They were working together. So it's not like everyone saw us have a massive argument and we were suing each other.
Yeah, there's no motive.
No motive. It's been an accident. Look, what we're doing. Because This is all part of the magic circle. So there are other witnesses here saying, yeah, we're all part of this magic circle act. Just call the cops like anyone should do. Don't call the daughter of the person who's been decapitated in a bloody mess.
Yeah, no.
'Cause I don't know why he thinks it, like she would want to see that or what she's going to do. Because you must assume that she'll say, why did you call me? Call the cops.
Yeah. No, it's absurd. And then her thought process is unimaginable.
It's absolutely crazy. I think her motive, what she thinks is that they can use the death of Franklin to manipulate and con Rosalind into believing in some mystical, supernatural, otherworldly...
Yeah, or at least into questioning her own unbelief.
That's terrible.
It's cruel.
Despicable.
Yeah. So she lies at this point and says it was intended to make it look like he died at home to spare her mother the horror. No, that didn't work anyway.
No. So you're going to make her question everything but her own logic, her own...
Like, at least he died at home. No.
But it doesn't spare her anything because the body's vanished. All for the rest of her life then she'll be thinking, if they get away with it, what happened? It could send you mad.
Yeah.
How can a body disappear?
Who knows?
No, it's a rhetorical question. I know.
Okay.
You know.
Anyway, Brad burned the scarecrow, as we saw.
Yes, because
the
there might be evidence there.
Of what? Of the non-crime that wasn't committed?
Yeah.
And buries the body.
Yes.
Because he's an idiot.
He is an idiot, yes. In the house, Fariba constructs a fake body using towels for stuffing
calling this out. You couldn't make this look just like a person.
No.
It wouldn't work.
Not in that amount of time with no practice.
Yeah.
This isn't sticking when you're a kid, pretending you're in bed, shoving something under your...
pillows or something?
Yeah.
No, this is absurd.
Also, she grabs a pair of his shoes, his boots or whatever.
Yep.
But the pictures not identify the change in footwear.
What do you mean the change in footwear?
Well, she grabs boots from his cupboard
and
puts them on the dummy.
But
that wouldn't have been the footwear that he was wearing.
Nobody knows what footwear he was wearing.
Oh, yeah, right.
You don't find the body.
Yeah.
But
they were missing shoes then.
If they had a clear enough photo of those shoes, it would match up with the footprints in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Which are miraculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
Okay, so where are we?
She does this and Rosalind takes her photo, which presumably wasn't intended from Fariba's point of view.
No, but before that, she goes up to the house with her father's head.
Yes, and puts it on top of this model that she's built.
So she's carried her father's head. What type of who could... You found out your dad has just died.
Yeah.
And you're capable of planning to deceive your mother and handle your father's decapitated head. You'd really have to be a bit of a psychopath to get involved in that.
I mean, they could have at least hinted that when she was back in the island, she learned that they had stolen her and it wasn't a rescue or something like that.
Yeah.
That sort of thing to give her some sort of motive to be cruel.
Or hinted that she found out that Rosalind was having an affair.
Yeah, anything like that. But
this,
no, it's just about mysticism
just
and
conning her.
Crap. Yeah.
Yeah. She's despicable.
Horrible woman.
Okay, so while she's doing this, Brad puts
burning the stuff, burying the body.
He buries the body. That'll show up at some point. The dog will find that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should do the trick though. You bury the body 6 feet down, then 3 feet down, put a dog's body, then cover that up. So folk will stop digging when they get to the dog's body.
Well, it might go, what's beneath that? So you'd have to put a cat above the 2 foot down.
Well, you would have a fly and then a spider.
Yeah.
And then
okay, so she sets up this the fake body. She puts her father's head on top, and surely again there'd be blood pouring out of that
over his shirt.
You did see that. Oh yeah, well fair enough. Yeah, there is blood everywhere. That's okay. So she set this up.
Yes, it's fortunate that it was cut off at such a way that she could balance it neatly on top of the.
Yes. Yeah, right across the neck, and rather like up through the face or the jaw or whatever.
Yeah. So then Rosalind comes in. Fariba pretends to be upset.
Well, she opens the keyhole with
blue tack,
so that someone can see through.
Nobody ever finds out, but yes, that's what she did. Photos taken. She thinks Rosalind's going to go away and phone the police.
Well, this is the thing. It gets even crazier here. So you're Rosalind. You come back. You hear the crying. You look through the keyhole, and you see your husband dead and your daughter collapsing and fainting in there. Fariba's crazy logic was that Rosalind would definitely leave the house or downstairs for 10 minutes, which would give her enough time to dismantle all these the props and dispose of the head.
Yeah, no.
No, it's 2013. You know that she's got a mobile phone.
Yep.
You have to assume that she will be outside there, banging the door, trying to wake Fariba up, shouting on her, whilst after calling the cops.
Yes. And also Fariba's plan relies on her being silent, more or less, if Rosalind's still in earshot. Oh, I suppose if she's gone away.
And if she hasn't gone away, how does she then get up and close the keyhole?
She just takes a chance that she's not looking at that particular minute, I guess.
This is garbage.
Because when you see it at the start of the episode, it falls down between two glasses. She looks in, takes the photo, and then it immediately comes down. So it's not like she was away or not looking or something. She could easily have been looking at that moment.
Exactly. So anyway, Rosalind doesn't leave, which means that Fariba has to improvise. So what does she do?
She hides the head inside the globe and drops the shoes outside the window where they, despite not weighing very much, land and make perfect imprints side by side. And the clothes. And then before the police show up, she nips downstairs, gets it all and hides it away somewhere.
Yeah.
Jonathan makes a bizarre note here, which makes no sense. Once you've seen a head, you assume you've seen a body. Well, maybe a head attached to a model of a body.
Yeah.
But I sure if you just saw a head, you wouldn't assume that you'd seen a body.
I know. Okay, so that was all through flashback, obviously.
Yeah, so they've solved that crime.
Yeah. Outside the house, later on, Pryke reminds them that they still don't know the ID of Rosalind's killer.
Yes, or why Greta's home was turned over. He wonders if there's a sting in the tail and thinks it's one for the professionals.
At this point, Jonathan receives a text from Polly, who has arrived back early from the States and is up for a bit of a party.
I think they've been invited to a specific party, but yes.
But from looking at this message, he has another eureka moment and claims that predictive text messaging has done them a favour in this instance.
They're obsessed with this spell checky text thing.
Well, David Rennick is obsessed by how writing can the meaning of it can be misinterpreted depending on grammar and what you see. It's a little bit clunky. But anyway, I like this. Inside the freezer in the garage, Pryke is showing what?
The head.
Yes.
Along with some vegetables.
We next catch up with the end of Jonathan's phone call to Polly, who is not happy that he has other things on, but thanks her for the address that she has given him and tells her not to give it to anyone else who may ask. Now, we don't know what this address is at this point.
Then we get a bizarre moment where the bald policeman combs his head and looks on suspiciously, then makes the creepy noise with his comb that we heard previously.
Did you put that together straight away?
When he made the noise?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the same noise.
Okay.
I don't know why he was combing his head when he's bald.
I don't know.
It's just, there's no reason for it other than to make the connection with the...
Yep.
It's stupid. It's like, why would he give himself away in that way? Maybe it's a habit thing.
Could be. We are now at the office of Jacqueline, who we met.
Jonathan's introducing Jack to Joey.
Yes, who he has ironically advised to keep an open mind.
Yes. It does seem that there's no animosity.
No. I'm sure Jacqueline has experienced all this before.
Yeah, quite forgiving sort.
Apparently, there is a DVD that they are keen to see. And we discover at this point that Greta was in fact a typo.
Yes, and that's the name of their company.
Well, almost. The company is called Great Portland.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a T and the A back. Oh, it's another predictive type.
Yeah, it's the Jacqueline's production company.
Yeah, and the DVD that she has for them to watch is an outrageous bit of political shenanigans.
Yeah, it's a pilot for a show called Kicking Against the Pricks.
Yes, it's meant to be, or it's set up to be, Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell discussing something dodgy.
Yeah. Did it remind you a little bit of sort of Bremner, Bird and Fortune, that type of thing?
Yeah, that sort of idea. But this next bit, this is where it starts to go rapidly downhill.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, this pilot was set up in the hope of attracting Tartikoff to come on board perhaps as a writer to add some comedy to this
because
satire.
He's obviously well regarded.
Yeah.
And he didn't like it, I think, or didn't like it enough to come on board. Yeah, and then this next thing. Someone in high places caught wind of this DVD and has been going around taking out anyone who might know about it and destroying every copy. Pish.
I think that's a fairly accurately succinct way of summing that up. I mean, I think we should say before we get to that as well, that Joey has fallen for it. They've tried to justify it by saying, oh, well, Joey thinks it's real. She views this and thinks it's a smoking gun that's going to get the high hegians and all sorts of bother. But no. Yeah, continue with the pish.
Oh, Polly is brought in by those two police officers that were annoying Pryke earlier. One, the bald man with the comb, and his friend. Can't remember her name.
I think Joey realises that as Fariba was a documentary maker, she may well have accessed it or viewed it.
Oh, that's why they had to take her out. That's absurd. One of them has a gun in Polly's mouth, but they release her back to Jonathan's care.
Yes, before dousing them and the entire place with petrol and taking the DVD.
But just then...
Well, he lights a match, first of all.
Yep, and just then...
the day is saved by the heroic Pryke, who drives in and dares the cop to drop it.
And he does.
But to no effect, because it wasn't petrol, it was apple juice. Now, if you're spraying that around, that cop would have known.
You'd smell that immediately.
Yeah.
Or at least you wouldn't smell petrol.
Exactly. And I'd be quite happy if I was Jonathan. I'd be thinking, something's not right here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. I'd be opening my mouth. Aim here, aim here.
And then you get this most ridiculous moment where he uses his joystick to take out the woman.
He does. That reminded me of Back to the Future 2. There's no way you could...
Yeah, I think it's meant to be a suspend disbelief moment and just enjoy him kicking her ass.
In fairness, I did. Apparently, he had found the petrol cans in the cop's car earlier.
When they searched it, so they must have been suspicious of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, the armed response team shows up at this stage and they clear everything up.
They do indeed. And outside, a slightly shamed Peter is there. And he is able to shed some further light on the whole business.
It all had to start somewhere. I'm afraid it started with me. A man who couldn't keep his mouth shut. That last day, I went round to check him over. I found myself alone in the study.
Ah, that'll be Fariba. She said she'd come when she landed.
It was devastating stuff, as I thought. I mean, absolute political dynamite. I may have mentioned it the next day to a friend at the golf club. A gentleman, well, let's say rather well placed in Whitehall. We can only guess how far it went. Up the ladder.
Far enough, at any rate, for a couple of specialists to be planted on my team, having already set about their dirty work. Took me a while to rumble that one, I'm afraid. Who else could have beaten me to that false lead in Derbyshire? They'll take the rap for all this today, but that's about all. Far too smart to leave any footprints.
Bit like the people they're protecting.
Well, we all know how it works. Smooth tongue, big smile, and the right hand gestures. You really can get away with murder.
No, not having it.
You said earlier, it's a lazy way of wrapping things up.
It's terrible. It's just unimaginative.
Yeah.
It's like, if you can't figure out how do we tie up these loose ends, I know, let's just say the government's trying to kill everybody.
Yeah. You don't have to explain things. There doesn't have to be that logic. No one's going to be held responsible for it. It's just, yep, that's it, done and dusted. Roll credits.
Let's just overlook the fact that Fariba was insane and tried to...
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, we're not quite finished. We're back at Jonathan's house, Jonathan and Polly's house.
Yes, and you're expecting Polly to be furious.
Yeah, but they're not. Over dinner, Polly reads from Joey's website, where she is taking credit for solving this puzzle.
Much to Polly's delight, because she doesn't want Jonathan's name involved with this.
Yeah, he seems happy enough as well.
Yeah.
And the two ladies seem to have hit it off.
They certainly seem to. Whether Polly's being genuine, I'm not entirely certain.
I think she might be. Although, this is the end of Joey, so who knows?
Oh, that's because they cut her in half in a minute.
They do. They're outside. They've had a few drinks. They're playing with a chainsaw.
Yeah, well, a man brings the trick that Brad and Franklin have been working on. It's delivered to them by a DHL driver or whoever he is. And a note from Brad is enclosed saying it might be a bit morbid, but he wanted you to have this. Did you think it was the head?
Yes. What's in the box?
Yeah, so anyway, they set this trick up, presumably with Jonathan's own chainsaw. Joey is, as usual, a willing volunteer. And as she gets some exposition out of Polly, Jonathan tries to saw her in half.
Yes, and he gets more into it as he realises they're having a laugh at him. So they're talking about how they met. Polly's talking about how he met Jonathan, and they think they laugh at his profession or his ex-profession. And he gets stuck in with the chainsaw.
Yeah, he cuts in half the tree behind her. And she asks if he has any joy, and he says, sadly not, as we conclude.
So, yeah.
They've undermined their own story. It's like they've got all these elements that work, and then it's like, oh, we can't quite tie it together. Well, I suppose that's the hard part.
It's as if David Rennick got bored off it. He had the plan, he had the
deadline.
The deadline, yeah, but he couldn't perhaps really work out how to finish it off, and just got lazy.
They could have done something with the church, getting involved because of the school thing. They could have tied it much closer to the original death.
Yeah. It's a little bit like Spearfish. That was unsatisfactory.
Yeah. Do you know what would have been less annoying? If the girl that they killed had not died, but they didn't know about it, and it was her that showed up trying to do it.
Or her family, her sister, who's now grown up, or brother, or whatever, taking revenge.
Yeah. And who tried to kill Joey? Was that one of those two police officers?
Must have been, yeah. In the quiet room.
And were they trying to kill her, or were they just scaring her away?
Again, doesn't make sense, because if they're trying to silence all these people, they must assume that she would know.
How did they know that Joey and Jonathan were going there?
And why would scaring them off that? What do you think is going to happen? That they're...
Yeah, that's separate from the other. That's nothing to do with the case that they're doing anyway.
No. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mess at the end. Which is sad, because it's the last time we see Joey Ross.
Yeah, in my opinion, the best of the sidekicks.
So far.
Yeah.
And I think that it's consistent with all the other sidekicks. They don't get a proper send-off, a farewell.
No, it's like they don't know. They leave it hanging so they can bring them back if things are okay.
Well, I think we've mentioned that before. I think that there's sometimes a fairly long hiatus, and no one knows who's going to be coming back, so there isn't a plot that revolves around them leaving, which is fine, because they might come back in the future. It leaves it open.
Should bring them all back.
They should do, yeah.
And then one of them dies, and the other ones have to figure it out. Or
one of them's a murderer. Yeah, and the sidekicks all have to, yes, that's how we could end it, yeah. Good idea.
And it turns out it was Polly, because it's always the spouse.
Yeah, okay. This is quite a long one.
Yeah,
this should have been a two-parter.
You could still divvy it up.
No. Let's go through what we've got.
No one's listening anymore anyway, it doesn't matter. Tweet us if you're still listening, at Creek Podcast.
The 1st of April 2013 was the original air date, and it was 19 minutes. Feels longer.
I'm sure some of the people watching thought it was an April Fool's joke at their expense.
David Rennick, again, writer and director. And of course, you would have recognised Joanna Lumley, who played the Rosalind. She was born in 1946 in India, I think, her father, I think, was a Gurkha.
Okay.
You would have seen her in Absolutely Fabulous, The New Avengers, Sapphire and Steel, Cluedo, Class Act, Sensitive Skin, Jam and Jerusalem. She was also in, recently, or a few years ago, The Wolf of Wall Street. We have discussed Nigel Planer before. He played Franklin Tartikoff, his second of 2 appearances. The first time was as Shelford.
Yes.
He was in the Reconstituted Corpse.
An early season 1.
A good one, yeah. Michael Lumsden was Peter Churchill, born in 1955. He has been in The Buddha of Suburbia, Doctors, House of Anubis, Casualty, Holby, My Good Friend, and Pig Heart Boy, whatever that is.
Sounds like a documentary.
Polly Creek was played by Sarah Alexander. She was born in 1971, and you will have seen her in Coupling, The Green Wing, Marley's Ghosts, Mutual Friends, The Worst Week of My Life, Teachers, Smack the Pony, The Strangers, or The Bill.
I think she completes the coupling set for Jonathan.
I believe so. She is married to the actor Peter Serafinowicz. What's his name?
Serafinowicz.
That's the one. Hasina Haque played Fabrina. Not a massive CV, but you may have seen her in Casualty, Kidnap and Ransom, or Indian Summers. Brad was played by Mark Frost. He was born in 1968 and has also starred in Poldark, New Blood, Rockets Island, Silent Witness, The Mill, Casualty, The Bill, Doctors, and Holby, amongst other things. Rip Mail, of course, played Inspector Gideon Pryke, who we have discussed previously. His second of 2 appearances, the first being in the special Black Canary, one of the best.
Absolutely it was.
And finally, D.I. Cudlip, the bad cop, the male bad cop, was played by James Buller, who was born in 1970. The only reason I've really mentioned him is because I think we've almost got the full set here. He has been in Doctors, EastEnders, Doctor Who in 2013, The Bill, Casualty and Holby City.
Bingo!
Yay! Do you have any trivia for us?
I think I've mentioned it all. I talked about the chainsaw stuff and I talked about the coupling set. That's
Okay,
about it.
a couple of bits from me. David Rennick had an uncredited role in this. He was the TV interviewer at the very start.
They'll say blew their budget on Bamber Gascoigne the last time and didn't want to repeat the mistake.
The Andaman Islands, the birthplace of Fabrina, is in fact located in the Bay of Bengal, and they are the home to a group of people, including the Sentinelese, who have had practically no contact from other forms of civilization. They are in fact featured in the Sherlock Holmes novel The Sign of the Four.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I think the title of this episode is a nod to the Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb, which is a Sherlock Holmes story. Episode review. This could be quite a minefield because of the different strands. But okay, the motive for Franklin's death, well, there wasn't one, it was an accident.
Yeah, same with Natalie's death as well.
Yes. But with regards to Franklin, the disappearance was in order to teach Rosalind a spiritual lesson.
Yes.
Okay. And Rosalind's death, the motive for that was...
It's so that Tony Blair's government wasn't brought down by some actors doing a film pretending to be him.
Well, it was mistaken identity. It was meant to be Fariba for that very reason.
Yeah.
Clues. Now, I'm not going to try and pick apart the different clues for the different things that are going on here. I'm going to read some out, and if you can think of anything, let me know what I've missed. We've got the thumbs in the pocket, the blue tack, the rotating pumpkin, the clean keyboard, the photograph that had been cut, the whole hangman thing, the multiple paintings, the sugar tin predictive text, GP, and the contents of the DVD.
The bald man's comb.
That's one, yeah.
The head in the freezer.
Oh, that's another, yeah, bit of a clue there. The gotcha this week, well...
They didn't, they just showed up and they'd solved it.
Yeah, I suppose we could say the contents of the DVD and the cops bursting in and trying to light them on fire.
Yeah. For the older stuff, it was some of the things that they found at the convent school.
Yes. And guilt is not applicable because no one will ever be brought to justice for this.
Fariba and Brad will go to jail for hiding the crime.
They should
Not
do.
the crime, but for hiding the body.
Yes. That's a big crime.
Yeah.
Should be punished. Custodial sentence. Next week, we have, now, how do we pronounce this? The letters of Septimus Nun, or no one. Maybe it's a plain word, we know that.
Yeah, that's the clue.
Yeah, David Rennick likes that.
Guess we'll find out when we watch it.
Yeah.
Again.
Did I say next week? Next time.
Next time, couple of weeks.
Until then.
Cheerio.
Bye bye.